Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's good to see so many of you here with us today. My name is Beth Savicki. I'm with CenterState CEO. I work on the events and the business development team. And I'm thrilled to welcome you today for our series, Eyes on the Future. But this has been a really dynamic series, a lot of great conversation. And a lot of our attendees have come away with some great nuggets of information to help them not only further their career, but think about what the next step is for them, whether it be in their own company or possibly changing positions. This entire series of programs is sponsored by CPS Recruitment. CPS Recruitment is not only a staffing agency, but also works with employers that are looking for new employees. So a very fitting sponsor for a series like this. And if you are looking for a job or looking to hire a new member for your team, please think of CPS Recruitment. They have a dynamic staff and will be a wonderful resource to you, I promise. So I want to thank them for their sponsorship. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague and my friend, Sarah Broadwell. Sarah will be moderating today's session, returning to normal. And we use the word normal in quotes because what is the new normal? So Sarah?
Hi, thanks, Beth. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Thank you so much for being here. It is not lost on me that I'm reporting live from my kitchen as opposed to my office today. Our firewall is down and my hope was to be in the office. And I joke that I was asked to moderate because I am one of the most social people, I think, on our team, and definitely eager and excited to get back to the office in some capacity. But that being said, what does that mean for all of us? What is the new normal? When are we returning? How are we returning? How are we going to get from Zoom to the water cooler? How are we going to get back into meetings and just kind of back into the routine of in-person work? Also, what does that mean? Are we ever going to go back full-time? Are we going to be a hybrid forever? With so many unknowns and so many day-to-day challenges for everybody as professionals, we have a few very important people here with us today, some experts on some of these topics that I'm excited to be here. So we're going to do a Q&A at the end. Feel free to use the chat as much as possible throughout our conversation. So with that being said, I am thrilled and proud to announce Monifa Wilcox, to introduce her, our Vice President of Human Resources at CenterState CEO.
Good morning, everyone. As Sarah shared with you, I'm Monifa Wilcox, the Vice President of Human Resources for CenterState CEO. I've had the pleasure of being and holding this role for 6 months now, almost 7 months, and have enjoyed every moment of it. I've come in at a time where, as we all know, it was during the peak of COVID. We were all mandated to stay home, and not many of us had come into the office. And now we're looking at returning to normal, or returning to normalcy as we return back into the office. And what does that mean to people? The last time that we as a country were in this situation was, I think, in 1920, after the Spanish flu is what they were calling it then. And the country had experienced that. It was after World War I. It was after the Red Scare. And Harding used the return to normalcy as a campaign slogan. And what he meant then was that we were going to return back as a country where we were pre those incidents. Now we're faced with a situation very similar to that, but it's affecting us all very differently. We work very differently. We interact with one another very differently. We have technology that allows us to do so in a very different way. What I'd like for us to come away with in this process is that returning to normal, or to what normal is to us, is a process. It is not something that we should expect to just jump into right away. It's not going to happen right away, and it can't happen right away because, as we know, we get new information almost daily about vaccines and how we as organizations should respond to the mandates and the laws and the regulations. So with that said, would like for each of us, as we go through this process, to realize just that it is a process. Take it slowly, take it day by day, and be considerate of one another as we go through this. There are all types of things to consider, not only how we get work done, it's how we interact with our coworkers, how we deal with emotional stressors that we are having individually as people, our families, and as employees. It all affects us. I think it's important that we acknowledge those fears, recognize them. And they're fears like fear of germs. I will share that before this, I was called a germaphobe. Now I'm like, aha, you guys laughed at me. Now we're all in this situation. We're all doing the same things. Did I shake hands before? I don't think I shook hands before. And those are one of the things that will now become our new normal in places, to greet one another in different ways instead of extending a hand to shake, which interestingly enough, do you all know the history behind a handshake? No, I'll share it with you. So the history behind a handshake is that we would extend as gentlemen your right hand to show that there was not a weapon in there, because that was your dominant hand when people pulled out a weapon to duel. So when you met a stranger, you would extend your right hand in peace. Isn't that interesting? So now we fist bump, we wave, we do a little head nod. Those may be our new way of greeting individuals. With this, as employers, I also need to acknowledge, and we should acknowledge, that there will be some expense associated with this. As we go through the changes and what we need to comply with policies and regulations, there are some expenses with that. How do we track those who are employees who are vaccinated and not vaccinated? Which brings me to another topic of how do we honor those who choose not to become vaccinated for one reason or another? Those are all things that we need to consider and respect, and share that we should respect those choices with our employees and with one another. Surveillance tracking is an expense. How do we space out our workspace so that when people do come back, they feel safe in an environment that allows social distancing and safe spacing between one another? Do we stagger schedules? Do we stagger work schedules? Do we stagger lunch schedules? Meetings. How do we schedule meetings now? Is it all by Zoom or Team? And the expense associated with that. And as you see, I don't know if you've seen that, my picture has now come cleaner and come in sharper. These are the things that we will experience through this change. And as we work through COVID. Let me think, I'm trying to think of what else. I took notes and I'm trying not to look at my notes. But as you have questions, if you would just put them in the chat, share them with Sarah, Dumley, I will gladly address them. But I also wanted to talk about why it's important, or just mention why it's important that we do come back. We miss one another. I know I miss chatting with my coworkers and laughing and sharing little personal anecdotes about what happened over the weekend with me and my family and my pets. But there's also a real expense to not coming back to organizations. Turnover is expensive. I'm sure that there are some on this panel who know and agree. And so we have to address that, not only for each of us individually, but as an organization. I think, have I allotted and taken up too much time at this point? Okay. I think
Monifa, never.
Thanks. I think in this process, as an organization, we should, as organizations, consider how we bring people back, that we, again, are mindful and careful and considerate of individuals who will be working with us and working for us. We want to maintain trust in that. So our trust with our employees. So our policies should reflect that, we consider them as individuals, and they aren't just considered numbers to us. They aren't just considered widgets or spokes in a wheel. But with that said, realizing that they are spokes in our wheels, we are all working together to make this work. I think if those points are taken, I'll return to what our new normal will be easier.
Thank you, Monifa. Next up, I am happy to introduce Louise Han, who is the Site Human Resource Manager at FitzPatrick Nuclear Power Facility. Welcome. I was excited when you were a panelist because you bring a different group of employees. You have a different kind of situation on your hand where you, a large majority of your workforce was deemed essential right from the start of the pandemic. So you have a unique situation and we are excited to hear your input. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here today. Yeah, I have been with FitzPatrick since February. So like Monifa, I changed positions and actually had not even been on site. This is a nuclear power plant. You have to get access and it's a process to get access. So I took the job. I had not even been on site, which was interesting. I just want to start off with, so let's go back to March 2020, right? I was with a different company. I was actually with Saab at the time. And I recall we were talking through how this pandemic, so I don't even know if it was called a pandemic then, but the COVID was going through the country and more cases. And we heard that the governor was going to have, only essential workers could be working and most people, should not be on site. So we put together a plan in about, I don't know what the rest of you did, but I can tell you, we put together a plan in about 2 days, announced it on Monday, and on Wednesday of that week, I think it was on the 16th or 17th, all employees went home. They sat with their manager. We had a plan of, with the leadership, got together and decided this is what we're going to do. Here's the people, we had a spreadsheet, and thank goodness we only had about 400 employees, which for some of you that might be a lot more than you have, and others may say, oh my gosh, that'd be great, but it was around that many, 400. Every single person, do they need to be on site or don't they? And we had a few that needed to be, that were doing parts and working on certain projects that even at Saab. And so we put together a plan and had everyone, they communicated on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, if you were going home, you took your computer home. And that was that. We went through and looking back now, we had a lot of, I think you probably had the same experience. Some employees loved it. That was the best thing since sliced bread. Others were very apprehensive and said, I can't, I only have my kitchen table, whatever. But we had everyone comply and we talked through it. I had a lot of conversations with employees. And you probably have some, if you have an HR person, they went through the same thing. Here we are. We thought it was going to be like, as I think everyone did that, let's flatten the curve. This is going to be about 3-4 weeks. Here we are 18 months later. I know Saab, they have returned to the office, what we call at Exelon reentry. So it's interesting. Yes, we do have a lot of employees who are on site, but we also have a good percentage of them. If they can be off site, like our engineering department, finance department, actually myself, HR, you can see my background a little fuzzy, but I'm at home. We're still fully remote. So I guess I have a couple of things. If you've already brought everybody back, some things to think about are make sure that, as Monifa says, this is a process, be flexible. You may have a day or two, especially we've got the new Omicron variant coming through that might bring us into a new situation that we'll face. And there's the OSHA potential, if you have 100 more employees and the vaccine mandate and all kinds of things that we could spend a lot more than the hour and a half on going over them. But I have a few things that I just want to impart to you today and just kind of talk through that I think are really important for bringing employees back. And that is that where you can, I've experienced this myself with doing recruitment, and you probably have seen the same thing. And I'm sure Susan will talk about this more at more length than I will, but flexibility is key. This hybrid model, where people can be more flexible. And I read something in the Harvard Business Review in the last couple of days that it's not really about flexibility so much as autonomy. But people want to be able to have that autonomous, hey, I'm going to, I can decide. I know that Wednesday I have a meeting, I need to be on site. On Friday, I have some things I'm dropping off the kids, or I needed to handle something else, or I have an appointment. It'd be much better if I were home. Bringing together, making kind of the real life whole person to work is going to be critical going forward. So I don't look at it as, that was great analogy of the water cooler, and that's going to be certain days, but overall, the normal is what we have now. This is going to be somewhat, get used to it. We go, well, we'll be back to normal. This is normal. But I think the way to be successful with your employees and with your company, if you've seen higher levels of attrition, or you're having people have a little bit more difficulty finding people, and it's a candidate market out there. Definitely is. Move quick, move fast if you have someone you're interested in. But I think the other thing is have that flexibility, that autonomy, set it up where you can. I noticed there were a couple of companies here that are banks. I completely get it that you have a teller who's got to be there. They've got to be there. What you can do, my other word of advice here, is make sure you have very good leadership. Always key, but now more than ever. If you have employees who are in leadership positions that really shouldn't be there, they shouldn't be there. You will have, the number one reason people leave is because of leadership. So, they will say, oh, I'm getting a better opportunity. I'm moving here. I've got that there. But a lot of times it has to do with their immediate leader, the manager. So make sure you're choosing the right people and you've got the right people in place. And to do that, so I have a couple of just little tidbits on keeping your employees when you have them. If you're not doing exit surveys for the people who are leaving, you should start doing that. It can be a simple Survey Monkey. You can even have, if the leader take a few notes, something to get some information. Survey Monkey is better because it is more anonymous. And stay interviews. If you're not doing stay interviews, why are you people staying? What's keeping them there? Having that data can really be helpful to you to make decisions and move forward. And I will close with this last thing here, is that it's really important to communicate with your employees. Communicate what your plans are. If you haven't done reentry already, when you plan to, and if you change it, that's okay. I can't tell you how many times I've been at Exelon for 10 months now. I started in February this year. When I first started, our reentry was May 1st. Within about 30 days of me being there, it moved out to June, and it has moved. We have changed it now. We don't even have a reentry date. What we've committed to employees is that for those who will be coming back, and we have very few that are going to be coming back completely, we're going to go to a hybrid model. If I haven't already mentioned that, we will be going to a hybrid for people who have been remote. We'll give them 30 days notice and let them know about that. And and that will give them some time to take care of everything from pets. I was talking with some friends a few nights ago who have gone back to the office just full time, and their pets are having a really tough time with them not being at home anymore. And children, childcare needs, just as in March of 2020, it was really tough, and there was a move back to people had to kind of get used to being at home. They'll need to make arrangements to be back in the office. So again, communicate to your employees. Please have great leadership, and choose the right people in those leadership roles. That is key to keeping your employees, and have a plan, and understand that it's going to change. So thanks, Sarah. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Louise. And I couldn't agree more. I think transparency as a whole has been really important throughout this entire pandemic. Next up, we have Susan Crossit, President of CPS Recruitment. Susan.
Good morning, Sarah. Thank you. Well, I first want to say I am really happy that we're able to sponsor this program for everybody. It's been fun. It's been, I hope, helpful to the people that have participated. So thank you for the opportunity. And I also want to say that Louise and Monifa absolutely have hit it right on the head of what we need to do to help people re-enter. Mindfulness is key. Understanding where people are is so important. And I think one of the things that we've learned in the last nearly 2 years is that we have to understand that this is hard on everybody. It's hard on the managers, it's hard on the workers, it's hard on the entire team. And if you have some empathy around what someone's going through, it makes for a better workplace. Study after study have, in the last 6 months, people have been studying this issue over and over again. Harvard, Wharton, others, talking about what do we need to do differently to take advantage of some of the things that we've learned as we've gone through this pandemic. And I think one of the things that's really come to light is, we can no longer treat people like a widget, as Monifa said. They are part of the team. They are absolutely, in almost every single company's case, they're the largest input when it comes to your cost. So therefore they should be required, you should have the largest attention to them. And as you bring people back, I think it's really important, to Louise's point, things are going to change. The plan may be one way one day and another day. And as long as you're transparent and share with everybody, look, we're in this together. We don't know what the rules are going to be, but this is what we're trying to do. Honesty, it goes so far. I mean, it's just, being open and sharing and saying, I don't know what the next month is going to look like, especially with the new variant. What does it mean for us as we work together through this? We've been back in person since June of 20, but we've done it in a hybrid model here at my location. But we have some people that are totally remote and can't come back. So, the idea is, how do we make them feel part of the team? How do we make sure that they feel like they belong? And I think that one of the things that we've learned is you really need to reach out more frequently. And it's not, did you get your work done? It's, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Do you need anything from us? Trying to come up with ways to connect with people even when we're all remote. One of the things that we've done is we had a big outdoor picnic last year in the fall, and again this year over at Green Lakes. And our team from New Hartford and Auburn came in, but we were outside. We got to see each other. We got to, play some games together and have some cake and celebrate people's anniversaries. And it was just fun because, after a few Zoom meetings of trivia, people were like, okay, we need to do something different. Even though my son was the one who did the trivia questions, it was still something we had to change up. But, one of the things that are important is, let's do things like reverse town halls. You could do that. You could have people come in and say, even on Zoom or Teams, here's what's going on in my area. So we've enlisted that in the last couple of staff meetings, asking every person to go around and just name one thing that they're working on. And then you can see, how does it connect with the rest of the work of the company? And then it also makes people feel pride for what they're doing and how they're contributing to the work. You can have listening tours, where the CEO or the leadership team go and listen to people and just talk about things that are happening. We are, and again, we have to be very mindful of, we've got a lot of breakthrough COVID coming out now. People are vaccinated and they're still getting sick. So how are we dealing with that? And at the same time, understanding people's privacy issues. They may not want everybody to know that, there's been a breakout in their house, but you have to keep track of the tracing and all of that. So it's a really interesting balancing act right now. But I think that one of the things that if we can come away with going forward is making sure that people in leadership and each other, that we have empathy for each other, that we understand that, there is life beyond the 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, whatever your schedule is. at work. And, you know, I think that a lot of leaders have figured out the COVID impacted them too. So maybe that's given them a lot more empathy for their own employees, which is really helpful. So this is an opportunity, I think, to make sure that we have happier employees, that we have, you know, a joyful place to come and work. Even if the work is really hard, if you can do it together and understand one another and be mindful of what each of you are going through, it makes it fun. I mean, I like to work, so maybe that's just me. So those are the things that we're thinking about. And again, have to be very, very mindful of, it's going to change on a regular basis. And as long as you're transparent and honest with people and say, look, I don't know, I don't have the answers. We're going to figure this out together and we're going to make it work for us together. I think that's going to go a long way. And it certainly will go a long way for retention, as Louise was talking about, because retention is key. Certainly, you know, turnover is very costly, but retention of good, happy employees is you know, key to making your business successful as well. So those are my thoughts, Sarah.
All very great thoughts. I will tell you that in the position at CenterState, the culture has always been pretty flexible. So we've been very lucky. I've been here for 4 years almost with the Greater Oswego Fulton Chamber of Commerce, and I sit on the business development team at CenterState. And I took this job for the culture and for the flexibility. And throughout the pandemic, I think we were able to kind of lean into it quicker and faster because it's always been the culture. And now we've seen lots of companies have to lean into this. You know, they have to start being more flexible. I have a lot of friends who have switched companies and positions, and they used to say, Sarah, what do you mean? You know, Parker's sick, you can work from home. Well, yeah, Parker's sick, I can work from home. That's why I took this position. So now it's kind of interesting seeing so many different corporations and all different industries have to be flexible and have to treat employees better. So I think that there is a silver lining to all of this in some point. Susan, I think that was a really good point. You know, you have to treat your employees well and you have to check in on them. And I think that that is certainly a silver lining. So with every positive, there's a negative. So I'm going to start off with a tough question. What about any employees that you have that refuse to come back, that say, listen, I'm just as productive at home as I am at work. I have no plans to come back? Or has there been any instances where perhaps people are abusing the policies that you've run into? I know those are kind of a little bit the same and a little bit different. So I wanted to start off with a tough kind of question here. So
I have 3 staff people that are not going to come back. And all have different reasons, but mostly it's because of concern for health. One person, her dad, who she lives next door to, is going through cancer treatments. So she does not want to risk, you know, coming back, and she can't come to the parties either, you know, even if they're outdoor. And I think, you know, she's a great employee. She works hard. We can tell, you know, when she's working and when she's not. I mean, we all have that capability today. But I think she has told me on so many occasions that she's so grateful that we're flexible with her on this, that, you know, working from home is important to her. And, you know, we're lucky in our business that we can work remote. We're not like FitzPatrick where you have to, you know, a good chunk of the portion of the employees have to be there. So yeah, I have that and we're just going to make it work. If it wasn't, I did have one person that was not the best employee performance wise, and she chose to leave on her own because we started saying, you know, we're not seeing the production when you're home, what's happening. And she said, well, you know, I don't have any work to do. Yes, you do. So, but she didn't like the, you know, we talk about being autonomous, and that's important in a lot of positions, but you also have to hold people responsible for getting their work done. That's key. And when we did that, that's when she decided it wasn't this, this office wasn't for her. So.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and to Susan's point, flexibility is important. One of the, Sarah, like you said, silver linings in this is that as organizations, those who thought we could not do this, we can't work from home, we have to be in, have quickly learned that they can. So that is a silver lining. But like Susan said, we still have to hold people accountable. So there will be still those individuals who will not want to work or will not want to come in and won't perform as we expect for them to. And there's no difference in holding them accountable to what they're responsible for, whether we are in this situation of working remotely, whether we're in this situation of working and navigating through this pandemic or not. Those things should not change. And so with set policies in place, if we follow those policies and we follow the expectations of holding people accountable, it should go smoothly.
As you said, we've had most people who have been on site through the whole pandemic, and we have protocols of PPE. So everyone on site wears a mask, social distance, regardless of vaccination status or not, especially with the new, this is just the CDC requirements that came out about, I think a couple of months ago, they changed them. And so prior to that, we did have an option for people to provide information that they'd been vaccinated and then they could go without a mask. But then when the CDC updated their guidance, we're completely, everyone's wearing a mask who's on site. And it's probably part of our industry and, what we do, but we have employees that are committed, to being there. They understand that they need to be there, whether it's security, people in the control room. And for people who are coming back, as I said, we haven't done re-entry yet. So I have not had the situation, but we're going to be a hybrid model. So unless someone said I can't come in ever, never, ever, because we're saying you need to work it out with your manager, and it could, if there's an on-site meeting, there's something you need to be on site, then you'll need to be there, and you'll work it out with your manager. So I expect that we may have some challenges then, and we'll do that. I recall just one quick story. So when we first went to full remote at Saab, I had one of the, and we had very, very few, I think 20 people out of the 300 and say just under 400 that were on site. And there were a couple of leaders there. I was going to be one of the rotating leaders, but one of the what a gentleman said, you know what, my working at home, I'm not good at it. This home situation, all my 3 college kids are home. My wife is home now. I prefer, can I be the leader that stays there full time? And the other 2 of us said, sure, you're there. But I remember one of the marketing guys gave me a call and said, I need to be at the office. I just need to. I need to be there. I can't work at home. And so I talked him through it, and it's like, well, there's not many people there, but no, I need to. Well, I think he had some impression that there was all kinds of activity going on at the office, or he was missing out on something, because he was there about 3 days that next week, and then he went back home. So, and we had a couple of gentlemen also who, we had a lot, it's mostly engineers at Saab. So it happened to be another male that came to me, and and he just was having a tough time with concentrating at home. And we talked it through, and he said, I need to be at the office. There's too much, activity. And he went into the office, and as far as I know, he was, probably still is. And he did that through the whole pandemic. He was worked through the whole, everybody else was remote. But again, the manager talked to the team and said, this individual is going to, if there's something you need to have, but we're doing this for safety's sake. So again, I go back to what Susan said is, talking to people, letting them know. It goes a long, long way.
Louise, was it my husband that was in your office begging to stay on?
No.
I know you can't tell, but the few days that my husband has worked from home, he has a different appreciation for sure, as someone who has been on site throughout the pandemic. So blink twice if it was him. I'm sure it was.
No, it wasn't.
That was actually my next question for everybody. How about the people who traditionally are the most productive and want to be at the office. What does that mean? Are we willing and able to have people back in a full-time capacity at this point? I know many of us are hybrid right now here, but can you speak to a little bit about that, about what that means when you have some full-time employees that choose to be there?
So yes, the answer to that is that we are able to. As you know, with CenterState, there's social distancing. There have been guidelines from the CDC, there are OSHA guidelines, and even under the HEROES Act through the state of New York, guidelines as to what we can do to keep individuals safe as they come in, if they choose to come in. Provide PPE, provide the mask, provide the gloves, provide the hand sanitizers. We've done provide extra ventilation and filtering within the building itself, as well as putting place markers down and directional markers as to which direction individuals should walk in. So it is possible to allow people to come back into work for those who want to, and it's worked for those individuals to give, again, allowing flexibility.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's we have some individuals who are in the engineering department, as I said, that are, remote, full-time remote, but there's a majority of them that come in probably 2 or 3 times a week. I am fully remote. I go in at least once or twice a week, and my site leadership and my, leadership at corporate is in full support of that. I try to have it around a meeting that's there, or, some other reason. And sometimes I just come in. Again, I'm a site HR. It's one of those things where if you're not on site at all, and there's quite, as Sarah said, yeah, we still have quite a few employees, a majority, who are on site. And if I'm never there, but there's a question here I saw about, keeping morale high in the chat there, and, being, yeah, you're right, change management on steroids for sure. I think that, so we've a lot of people who are on site and some off site. The on site people, when we're having a celebration, we've done individual, like donuts in the morning, and other snacks, of course, individually wrapped lunches we try to do for people on site. It's not, the thing that I've learned is it's not a just because you're home does not mean that you're on vacation. And the people who are on site aren't just doing the minimum. Everyone is working hard. Having that mindset of we appreciate you where you're at and what you do and what you contribute goes a long way. I think that keeping the morale high is communication, and having your leaders reach out to people so they don't get too much, they feel too much out on an island. You still want to have that connection. That's important. We have, Susan mentioned it, those Zoom calls with trivia. We've done that. Oh my goodness. And at first, and I do not, this might surprise you as an HR person, I do not like those kinds of things. I just don't. I don't mind doing team building, but I don't like being a part of it. So I'll just say that up front. But they can be so much fun. So I go in there with the oh my gosh attitude, but I come out and I've really enjoyed them. So I've got to know my peers. So that can help, is just keeping people engaged, whether it's one-on-one or as a team. We have also done, my HR manager, actually my director, and the VP has done it too. We've had meetings where the meeting is to just be with each other and talk through, and sort of like, well, not really doing wine or anything. I guess you could if that's allowed, but the main thing is to connect.
Louise, that's an important point. Think about how many people have been hired on during this pandemic. I mean, some people went from college to work remotely. How do they connect, and how do they feel part of the organization? So my daughter works for a startup in New York, but she lives in central New York. And one of the things they did is just what you said. Every Friday, they highlight a person on the team, and that person has 15 minutes to talk about themselves and introduce themselves to the rest of the group, and they can have question and answers, and it's meant to be very casual, just to get to know you kind of thing. One of the things that we're doing is we split the company up into groups of 5, and we're having get to know your neighbor lunches, because again, staying connected is so important right now as we go through this, and hopefully we'll be able to continue those lunches. I don't know what next week will bring. but that's been fun. And then yesterday I was talking to the group before we got started about, we had a little party here to decorate our Christmas tree. In the years past, the former owner of CPS Recruitment, Lori Lichty, would have this 2 nights of Christmas party for clients and candidates and community members. And the place was decorated like you can't believe. And she had it professionally done. So we're not having the party. We're not, we didn't have it last year. We're not doing it this year. But, we still want to feel festive. So we gathered up all the decorations ourselves, and everybody took part, and we had hot cocoa, and, you did all the things that were required of us from the CDC guidelines, but we were able to have fun and decorate it, and had an ugly sweater contest, which I didn't participate in, but I had a red sweater on. It was really fun. It was great, and people enjoyed it. And it's just something to do to break it up and feel connected again.
Yeah, we did one where there's about 30 of us probably in the VP team, and we each submitted a picture, and then you had to guess who that was. And I had no idea, but some people knew, like they had their favorite, sports teams or whatever, and everyone's, or where they were from or something they were very involved in, and immediately they knew. And others, wow, you just found out some very interesting things about people's hobbies and what was important to them. And it was just fascinating to me. One other thing, so getting back to this whole change, I was talking with a peer, I'm Percy Moy Sherm, and we're getting together just this week. And one of our members of our executive board was talking to us about how they had changed the dress code because, and it was partly because of resignations and people, they were trying to find a way for people to want to come to work and stay. And so they changed the dress code, and they called it wear appropriate for the day. So they didn't have wear this, don't wear that. It was just what's appropriate for the day. And they had fabulous results with that. I mean, he was gushing about it, and it had gone over very well.
Yeah, we did that. We had shorts allowed this summer, which was, never would have done that in the past. But it's, and one of the things that's come out of this, and we talked a little bit about it, is the fact that maybe we're not doing as, the formal team building exercises that we used to do, and it was required, and you check the box, you got that done. Because we're making a concerted effort in this area, it seems less formal, it seems less required, it just seems more natural and fun, so I think that's, again, one of the benefits, one of the silver linings that we have to look at as we come out of this, or as we continue to maneuver through it.
I will say, as a woman in a turtleneck with a lot of makeup on and leggings for my kitchen table, my kids always know when I'm going to the office because mommy breaks out the heels, after so long of being at home, they always can tell when they come down, oh, you're going into the office today. Yes, mom's going back to the office today. We were discussing the need for when people come back and whatever capacity, the PPE requirements, different seating arrangements. In general, I know in the beginning, a lot of things were getting donated and people were kind of coming together. And now that we've been at this almost 2 years, what does that look like for capital spending, for budgets for the future? How has that affected, your budgets, and what do you foresee for safety in the future with a new variant coming out? Do you think we're going to require even more PPE, more separation? What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, again, I think this is one of those things that is now our new normal. Not only supplying requiring the PPE, but supplying it for our employees. I know that I included it, and we talked about it in our budget this year. It's an expense. It's an office expense, and we put it down. With the new OSHA regulations that are still on hold, but may be coming through, another expense that organizations would have to consider is the possibility of having to pay for testing for those individuals who are either unable to or choose not to become vaccinated. Those are things that are real cost to the organization that should be considered. As you said earlier, I think that there were some cost in redesigning the office space, whether that was moving cubicles so that we had more distance between us, whether that was purchasing more electronic equipment so that we could do more Zoom calls and do it more effectively through conference rooms, and for individuals, supplying individuals with tools they need to be able to work from home, cameras, laptops that are easier to transport from place to place. Those are all expenses. And then there are the intangible expenses, the expense of that we don't see. When I say intangible, things that are behind the scenes, the cost of individuals being out sick. That's a cost that we consider, and we don't always see that in front of us. The cost of turnover or hiring up again. Those are all costs that we've incurred throughout this pandemic, but I think we've seen benefits from, and we'll continue, and we'll have to consider as we move forward.
Yeah, we provide PPE too. So we've got masks at almost every entrance, and hand sanitizer. Gloves are a little bit more difficult to find, but if people want to have gloves, they can. We've, when I first started, so we changed a little bit. We still have the social distance, but for a while, now people just do it. But when I first came, to make sure people did, all the conference rooms were all marked, like where you could sit and where you couldn't. So there was, it was someone purchasing some, placards to put on the seats and on the walls to say, here's, please clean and sanitize your area before and after. And so there's been some definite change there. And I can definitely understand that, for the computers, having a camera, I mean, not many people had one. Mine happens to have one built in, but a lot of people had the expense to submit to have a camera added for all the Zoom calls. It's interesting though. I'm curious, just out there, I don't know if just to think about, because it's hard. I can't see everybody who might raise their hand, but I'm just curious. So do you typically use your camera or not? That might be a cultural thing. Maybe it's just used to it. We typically don't. And I read a study recently that said that people are even more exhausted by being on camera, because I know I'm doing this now. I'm looking at myself, I'm looking at everybody else, but you're very much aware of every gesture you make and where you're looking and everything. At least I am. Maybe I'm the only one, but so we typically do not use our camera, although most people have them. In some meetings we will. And I find personally that when I can just sit back and I'm listening and I can kind of doodle and write, I'm a lot more comfortable on those calls. And so maybe I might be the only one, but just something to think about when you're doing, the calls. Having that camera can be great, but it can be exhausting to people all day long when you're on camera. So it'd be interesting, Susan. So for the direct, for your company, and so what you've seen in this area.
So obviously our business changed pretty dramatically overnight. We no longer interview people in person. And we did that for the temporary staff. On the professional placement side, most of that work was done phone interviews, not in person, because they may be from all over the country. So we changed immediately, and everyone had to work from home. We do have a policy of cameras on, because to Beth's point, I saw in the chat box that it just shows that you're engaged. We only have 30 people internally, so you can see sort of everybody on our staff meetings when we do the cameras on. But I can tell you, I've been in meetings where one person doesn't have their camera on and they're presenting, and you don't feel like they're really connected. Or then, are they there? You ask a question. It's just, I find it really difficult. But when going back to interviewing candidates, we do that now on FaceTime or Zoom or, whatever way the candidate has available to them. And sometimes we just don't have the opportunity. So it's just a phone interview kind of thing, which works. I mean, it's made us much more nimble, of course. And then to Monifa's point about expenses, I had a plan in place of when we were going to replace everyone's computer, it was all planned out, who's was the oldest and all of that. Well, when you have to go remote within 2 days notice, you make those plans change. The team here was so great. Many of them used their own stuff. And then, we finally decided we're going to move the entire plan up, and we just bit the bullet and did it all in one fell swoop. We also changed and put up our entire system in the cloud so that we're no longer dependent on the servers here in one office or the backup servers in the other offices. So those are expenses that we hadn't anticipated. But it also makes us much more resilient. So there was some good out of it too. So I kind of combined two things into one response there, but yeah, cameras on, definitely much more expensive to do work, but not a bad investment at all.
Great. Camera on, hair done up front, maybe not in the back, if we're all being honest. So this is for all three of you, and it's individual kind of because everybody does something different. Susan, I know that you guys recruit and staff locally, regionally, nationally, and sometimes globally. So I'm wondering how that has been affecting business with every day changing, even countywide, it's hard to keep up. Louise, for you, I know that you have contractors coming in from all over the country, with different states coming in, and also, oftentimes different countries coming in. How has that been? And Monifa, for us, we have tons of people traveling generally for business. And what does that look like for all of you, trying to navigate not only the day by day, sometimes by second county regulations, but then on a broader span?
Wow. So we haven't had any international placements in a while. So let me just put that out there. We do work all over the country, and with a concentration in about 8 states. But actually what's happened is being able to work remotely and interview people remotely has actually been a big benefit, especially if the client that we're recruiting for is willing to have that person, whether it's in technology or engineering, work remote. They have a bigger candidate pool, and then they have fewer expenses for moving and transferring, that sort of thing. But the other thing that's happened, which is really interesting out of it, it also means the competition is no longer local. So we've had candidates be recruited by companies out of San Francisco that don't have to move, that get to stay and live in central New York or Western New York or Eastern New York. But yet, we can't compete necessarily with those companies if they're, an international company that is going to take their career in a much different direction than they would have had the opportunity to here. Maybe they're paying a lot more than we would in central New York. Maybe the benefits are different. But it's an interesting change that the competition is no longer regional at all, which is really surprising. But now that you think about it, it's not surprising at all. Yeah.
Yeah, we have, so we do have typically contracts. We go through what we call an outage, and we bring in a lot of people to help. And we have not, this is a non-outage year for us, thank goodness. Ours is going to be next fall, but we have outages, the refueling, and the plant is, shut down for a period of time for repairs and upkeep, and then it's, refueled, and then, so we've had people travel all over the country to other sites. And what we've done is, so they test before they go, they test before they come back on site. Sometimes they even test before they get into the site that they're going to. It depends on all the protocols. And, there was a time, and this is back when I worked at Saab, we had people who were traveling for business, and because of all the rules of, if you were a state that was, just adjacent to New York or not, and where you were going, it got really complicated way back when. And I bring that up because we might be facing that again at some point, but I hope not, because that made it really difficult between, as you can all recall, travel was, whether it was personal or business. So we don't have a lot of contractors right now. We haven't had employees who travel around, And for visitors, I mean, we sometimes have politicians come in, we have senior leadership that comes. We also have the NRC that comes in, the NSRB, I could go on and on. We have a lot of, if you think, I don't know in here who's regulated or you think you're regulated, no, compared to, I just can tell you, I've been at Verizon, at Palmco that did insurance claims, and we had auditors come in quite often. At Saab, we worked with the FAA and we had auditors come in. This is a whole new level, of course, and rightly so. It's absolutely necessary in the nuclear industry. But all of those, from the time I've been here February until we just had the NSRB, they come 2 to 3 times a year, and they were just did their look through, had meetings, everything, and that was all virtual. So there's a couple. When we did the NRC did come on site in the spring, sent a couple of people, whereas typically they send a lot. So it's fewer people, and when they don't have to travel, they don't. It's interesting how even the executive meetings, and even whether it's HR or executives come on site and talk through all kinds of things, whether it's business results, and we have a lot of business results meetings. They've been all done virtually just because of the concern of people, traveling and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know that at least in the near future, we're talking about 2022. I was just on a call with some leadership this week, and they talked about they are looking to do some business travel starting in 2022. That's today. We'll see how it is next week.
Yeah, to echo what everyone has said, as we have gone through this pandemic process, it has changed. The restrictions on traveling have changed, and we've just have to be able to change and adapt with those new requirements. But with the advent of Zoom meetings and team meetings, the need to travel has lessened because it is so much easier and quicker to just, log right in and you can talk to anyone across the world. Our large world has become so much smaller now and easier to connect. So that's, I think a good side of this.
All right. Okay. So at this point, does anybody, I know we had Katie Toomey likes to keep me on my toes, my boss here. I know we spoke a little bit about keeping the morale up as far as leadership goes. And Susan, I did put down, I thought get to know your neighbors lunches was really great. I love that idea. So I have noted that, and I'm going to coerce everybody at CenterState to try that, Monifa. What other ways? I know obviously it's just exhausting at some point, I feel like it ebbs and flows, and there's some days where my house is spotless and I have chili going and I'm on everything and doing well. And the next day I could want to sob, cry at my house. Oh, how am I still stuck here? How has everybody been dealing with the ebbs and flows? Obviously, Susan and, Monifa, we've spoke about checking in more and trying to keep morale up and decorating and stuff. What about when you have an employee who honestly is just really struggling? It's been identified. What resources, I know we've touched on other during other seminars, but just for the people here, what resources are you using internally to help anybody that just really isn't coping at some point?
So at CenterState, we have the EAP, an Employee Assistance Program. And I encourage people at all levels, at all times, to take advantage of that. It is a useful tool. Like you said, or like was said earlier, checking in with our staff. This can be hard for a lot of individuals. It is a lot to juggle the chili and the house and work all at once. Studies have shown actually that people are putting in longer hours working from home than they were when they went into the office. And they don't realize that stress is hitting and building until it hits and builds. Like it's too late at that point. So as leaders and supervisors, I encourage people to check in with your staff and sincerely say, hey, how are things going? Be mindful of when you send an email, because people will expect to respond. They will feel obligated to respond. So on our end, be mindful of that. Just because you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning, sending an email, don't, use the delay delivery so that people don't feel bad if they wake up at 6 and think, oh my gosh, this email's been sitting here for 4 hours.
That
And
is
then-
such great advice. Oh my gosh. And that's pre-pandemic good advice.
And then on the other end, if you do receive an email at 2 o'clock in the morning, don't feel bad if you respond the next day during business hours. It's okay. I think that we should all remember we are human. We are all human beings. We're not machines. We're not robots. It is at times going to be overwhelming because life is still going on beyond work. And the line between, while we're working from home, the line between working and our personal lives, it has become blurred at times, but we've got to be mindful of making and putting in clear boundaries for ourselves to make sure that we take care of us as individuals and make sure that we as leaders take care of our staff. Because if we don't, it's not good for anyone. It isn't, if our gas tank isn't filled, we can't do anything. And so make sure that our staff take the time to do that. Take the time to walk away, take a breath, walk in the middle of the day, just refill their tank, take advantage of their PTO or vacation time. Encourage that as we come to the end of the year. Take a look at what people have in balances and encourage them to take that time off. It's not always easy, but I think it's necessary.
We too have an EAP program. And the other day I asked to check and see how many people are using it. And we've had, obviously anonymously, we've had some people use it. So I'm pretty happy about that because that's one of the benefits you think, is it meaningful enough? Other companies that I've read about have not only the leadership check-in, but they've created buddy systems so that, if you've got an issue and you don't know who to talk to, you don't want to talk to your manager necessarily, or, bring it up to somebody in HR, no offense to my HR friends. But maybe just having that buddy system in place gives you an opportunity to share without feeling that it's going to impact your work reputation in some way, because people are afraid of that. They don't want to be known that, oh, that person can't handle this and look at the rest of us, we can, because that's not true. We all have our challenges. So I think that's also another opportunity to make sure people are doing okay as a buddy system. Whether it's voluntary or you just sign up and say, okay, you're going to be assigned to this person. I think it's important to do something like that.
Yeah, we also have the EAP, and we have a behavioral observation program, which is around all the time because we're nuclear. So we have a requirement that managers fill out each month. Yep, I've been observing my employee and all is good, because we don't want someone who looks overly stressed or may have some other things going on that may impact their decision making or their performance at our plant. So that behavioral observation program is always in, and managers are expected to report anything that they might see and deal with it, talk to the employee. We also do observations with, and I share this with you, maybe you can get the nugget out of it, I think in the end you'll see, but so we do these, we have observations and observe employees doing everything they do at the plant and give them feedback on it, and it's documented. Yep, I'm talking, they got the cart and walked down the hallway, and they were observant of the carpet on the floor, and they stopped and they read through all the directions and they did a peer check. I mean, very detailed. And part of that, we've launched something called Care Squared. So it is, because there is a, as you can imagine, there's all kinds of people giving all kinds of feedback, and they do these observations, and some of them were done really well, and others kind of felt like they were getting criticized or disciplined almost from these observations. So we have this new Care Squared, which is the way you ask questions, your curiosity about what the person is doing, asking the way you even ask about what does the procedure say, instead of, are you sure that's, just kind of the tone, all of that. So the program is the same, the behavioral observation, but the tone of it, how it's used, the feedback to the employee is to have them, improve and do better. And I bring it up here because you can just it's another way to connect. to know what your employees are thinking and feeling. And so I'm not advocating that you all go out and do this behavior observation program for everything everyone's doing all the time. But I think that the clear message here is that having people understand their employees, how they're interacting, the questions that they're asking, the curiosity of what's going on, rather than sort of the accusatory or coming to a conclusion or labeling a certain behavior, instead asking about it, finding out, being, we call this intrusive where I work, and it's a new word for me, but there's a lot of new words I've learned in this industry, but being intrusive. So not just saying, how you doing? And walking on, right? Intrusive would be, how's your family? How are you doing? You know, I know you worked on that outage out at Peach Bottom last week. How did that go? You know, you're back now, and I know you had to put your dog in the kennel. How did that go? So again, that intrusiveness is getting a little bit farther down into the details, and so I think that can go a long way. But yeah, we have the EAP. And I think that is a great resource if you don't have that at your company to do that, because I was talking with a team recently, and they were talking through, so they were a healthcare facility, and they didn't have an EAP. What they had doing, because they had people who did mental health. So if you needed mental health resources, you just go down the hall, there's your mental health resources. And then they had a new HR person come in and said, whoa, wait a minute. That's a great thing that those people are trained, but it's awkward for people to go. They see them walking down that hall. Those are their peers. They might not feel comfortable sharing that information. And and by the way, your mental health people might also want somebody who's a third party to talk to. So I think an EAP is a great resource, and you do get data on what are people looking at, what help are they looking for, but it will not say Louise, is your highest user or anything like that. But you'll get some good data on just what are the challenges that your employees have. And they're not just for drugs and alcohol. I go through the spiel of, because people who've been in business a long time, EAP was for the people who you thought were alcoholics or drug users, high drug users. And it's not at all. EAP has so many resources on childcare. It could be, I reached out to our EAP when I was looking for a lawyer to do a will, and who does wills, who specializes in the Syracuse area. And they gave me like 10 different lawyers. If you go through and look online, it's very difficult. Child care, they can help with that. Elder care, just about, it's amazing. And most of the EAPs also have a great resource of a website you can go to, and employees can go on their own and just click through and find resources that they need.
Thank you. Monifa, if we're going to do behavioral observations, I'm going to need a heads up on that, okay? Just a quick email so I can prepare.
I'll make sure your picture ready.
Thank you. I will say throughout the pandemic, our team is closer than ever. So the buddy system, I love that. Any new employees being onboarded, I think it's important to reach out to them and make them feel a part of the team. I know on business development, we have our own text threads that we have together, and that's one way we've tried to include everybody and laugh and try to make the best of it. So okay, Beth, I think that we're ending the program here a little bit. We can give some time back to everybody here, a few minutes in their day.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, everybody, for participating and being a part of our Eyes on the Future series. I want to personally thank Susan and Monifa and Louise for their participation in our panel this morning. You all provided insight from different angles, and I loved that. So thank you very much for being a part of today's program. Also, again, I want to recognize our sponsor, CPS Recruitment, and it is only through the support of our members that we're able to bring to you quality programming. So thank you very much to Susan and her team at CPS Recruitment. And Louise and Monifa, thank you again. Sarah, fantastic job. I'm so glad that you agreed to moderate for us today.